Hello and welcome to the next edition of the Data Dialogue. In this episode, my guest is Carmen Logue, Product Manager for InterSystems. Carmen is joining me to discuss adaptive analytics within InterSystems Iris and also how this works with popular BI tools and natural language processing capabilities in a variety of platforms. So, welcome, Carmen. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, we're talking a lot more about businesses wanting to adopt analytics and business intelligence capabilities at the moment. Why do you think so many businesses are only just getting to the stage of exploring analytics, what they might do with them, how they practically deploy analytics, all those sort of questions around exploitation of intelligence and analysis in the world today?
Yeah, that's interesting because I think it's certainly not for lack of past interest in this area. I was thinking the other day that I've been working with customers trying to get visibility from their data since they used to print them out and pin them on the bulletin board. So it's been a long time. And I think now most companies want to be data driven in their decision making, and most organizations want their employees to have access to data and insights. However, we recently worked with ESG on some research, and through that research found that only 7% of organizations say that over half of their employees have access to a data analytics platform. So what we infer from that is that many organizations have just a smaller number of people who can even access analytics and BI tools. I also think that there's been such a focus on data science and machine learning in the last years that drives this interest as well. So organizations are a lot more focused now on gathering data, working with it to understand it, and ultimately preparing it so they can apply machine learning to provide predictions and anticipate problems or opportunities. And I think the fact that not many people, as we saw from the survey data, have access is really putting pressure on our IT teams and data scientists to surface that data.
It's interesting. So InterSystems Iris, as we know, is a platform that can address a number of the issues around access to data, allowing more people within a business to analyze the data themselves. Could you elaborate on some of these capabilities?
Sure. Yeah, and that's right. I mean, it's very important to provide ways for analysts, data scientists, and others to be able to really self-serve and get access to the data and insights that they need. And, we've been pretty busy at InterSystems over the past few years in this area, but I'll start by talking about one of our newer additions. We rolled out InterSystems Iris Adaptive Analytics earlier this year to really try and provide business users with self-service analytics capabilities to visualize, analyze, and interrogate their data in a consistent way, and create something that we call a common semantic layer, so a common sort of language. Adaptive analytics enables business users to get the information they need from common BI tools like Tableau or my favorite Excel that they are used in order to make timely and accurate business decisions without having to be experts in data design or data management. And I think on a maybe if we go a little more technical here, the other thing that adaptive analytics provides is a design canvas that allows our data steward or someone who's got that responsibility to create and design kind of a virtual data model with what we call virtual cubes and query against that data on the fly. So adaptive analytics allows you to automatically build up those analytical structures underneath that support those queries. So as the data steward designs that virtual data model, the end BI tool users are able to access that data, which then translates it into queries that go against InterSystems Iris.
Certainly, I think there's some really good examples in the customers that I'm talking to in the UK about areas of data where adaptive analytics can really present them with some opportunities to sort of move forward the way in which they're using data. Picking a couple of examples that immediately sort of spring to mind where people are using these sorts of capabilities now. And in healthcare in the UK, there's, as a result of the pandemic, there's been obviously a lot of focus on how to optimize the deployment of resources within the healthcare system in ways that perhaps needed to react more quickly, but also have a clearer view across wider data sets. So information from the healthcare system, but also social care, and indeed other aspects of the overall community. And bringing data together into one place is obviously not enough. There needs to be the ability to classify, to categorize, to structure that data, and then to be able to explore and draw value from it. And adaptive analytics makes that much, much easier. As you said, with a little work from an analyst who can understand the fundamental data models that lie behind the information that's coming in. Adaptive analytics makes it much easier for the end users or the informatics team within a hospital to be able to interrogate that data and really start to look at who are the top 10,000 people using the healthcare services to a much greater significant extent than perhaps the others. For example, to allow the services to better target resources to where they're most needed. And it's a similar case in financial services. I think they're one of the biggest drivers that's been in financial services for many years is this idea of customer 360, where institutions really want to be able to understand not just everything they know about a customer, but everything they can find out about a customer from external sources and bring all that information together to have one overall picture of a customer, what they're doing with that customer, what the environment that customer is operating within actually means to the types of business that they want to do with that customer. And so being able to have this flexibility to consume data from disparate sources, to really construct easily, simply, dynamically a model which aids the interpretation of that, and then to have a platform which allows you to create the queries and the structures needed to draw value out of that data dynamically without needing a significant amount of data analyst or development expertise underneath that, really just sort of accelerate and that process, make it much easier to, if you like, extend and surround the ecosystem of data that sits around these uses. I mean, how would you sort of compare and contrast the two types of way in which we can look at data from a BI perspective? I mean, there's the approach that involves defining and building a cube and populating that, and then there's the more dynamic mechanisms in adaptive analytics. I mean, what would you say are the strengths and weaknesses of those, Carmen?
Yeah, and I think it's important to have both of those capabilities actually, because they are, each of them are useful for particular use cases. I think with InterSystems Iris BI, which has been a long-time product of InterSystems, we have the ability to create a physical cube. And that's a great solution when you want to embed analytics, embed dashboards into your solution, and particularly when when there's a need for real-time information. Right, so it's a cube that you build, and then from that point on, the data is kind of flowing into that. You're getting insights effectively in near real time. So that's a great solution in those use cases. With adaptive analytics, I think one benefit that you have is we're creating a virtual cube. So we're not actually going through the process of physically building that cube in the database. So it's easy to change that, right? You don't wait for a cube build. So you're building that virtual cube. If you decide you want to add another measure to it or a calculated column or something like that, you can do that on the fly, and that becomes available to the end BI users and effectively in real time. So that ability to modify that, I think, is very effective. And then the other thing I think where adaptive analytics is a good fit is if you have end users that are using a lot of different off-the-shelf BI tools, like I said, like Tableau or Power BI, Excel, you get to create this common this common model, this common language and set of definitions that translate to those end users. So they're not pulling the data out and reformatting it. They have this common model that they can work with. And the way that I think about it is that somebody who's running Excel in the billing department, right, can run a query against the same data model that somebody in the business office is doing with Tableau, and they'll get the same answer, right? And that's the thing I think that a lot of organizations struggle with, is trying to reconcile the different pieces of information that end users get, that end business analysts get, when they're trying to ask the same question. So the idea here is that with adaptive analytics, you remove that whole problem, right? So I guess for just to summarize that, InterSystems Iris BI is great if you are embedding dashboards into a solution, or particularly when you want to do, be able to look at real-time dashboarding and that sort of thing. And then adaptive analytics is for people who are doing, some ad hoc analysis with other BI tools or AI tools.
It does indeed, and I think there's something you mentioned there, which to me is really important, and that's the sort of the real time nature of some of these capabilities. Often, I think one of the big drawbacks with deploying BI solutions within an organization, within an institution, is the fact that there's latency between what's actually going on in the operational systems and then that data filtering through to a data warehouse or some BI platform, and then eventually bubbling up into some charts or a dashboard that may be half an hour old, or yesterday's data or last week's data. This idea of being able to have timely intelligence that reflects what's going on in an organization now, I think is a really powerful one. Could you talk a little bit more about perhaps how how InterSystems Iris enables that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I think, so if we're talking about InterSystems Iris BI, because those cubes are pre-built, the structure is there, and the data, one of the great things about InterSystems Iris BI is it's built very close to the data. So that update happens very quickly and allows us to get that information, as I said, almost immediately. That's constantly flowing in. I think the other thing maybe to talk about in terms of performance with adaptive analytics is that there are acceleration structures built underneath it. So with adaptive analytics, there's a focus on kind of very large data sets, for example. And, with those kind of ad hoc queries that people are running from the BI tools, we have an opportunity to use some built-in capabilities of adaptive analytics to build what we call acceleration structures in Iris. And those, let me make a distinction between those acceleration structures and caching. With caching, we're just storing the data and so that we can go get it again, so it gets stale, right? With the acceleration structures, we're doing a couple things, but one of them is we're looking at the question that's getting asked and trying to essentially reformat the query so that we can ask it more effectively. And then secondly, we're looking at that to determine, are there other things that, other common kinds of things that people are going to need, and kind of pre-creating those aggregation structures before somebody asks. So for example, if somebody is running a query to look at sales from last week, the underlying software might look at that and go, they're also going to need daily. And so they'll pre-create that without somebody asking for it. So there's some built-in speed there. Now, with adaptive analytics, we're, in contrast to Iris BI, we are looking at, more large and, more historical kinds of data sets. But it does make those kinds of questions faster over time as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Carmen. So another area that sort of interests me in this field, we talked initially about the fact that there's a lot of focus on marshalling data into AI and machine learning, but there's another parallel sort of a area where people are looking at how to consume and make sense of large volumes of data, and that's in the sort of the field of natural language processing, and incorporating the outputs of natural language processing within analytics, surfacing data from that processing into the sorts of analyses where you can actually take action. Or why would you say that this is increasingly important in today's organizations?
Yeah, well, I think primarily it's that there's just a huge, it's growing amount of unstructured data. So everything from social media content to doctor's notes to customer survey results. And, this is something that is not slowing down by any stretch. It just seems to be, the amount of unstructured data that's available seems to be increasing almost exponentially. So I think, organizations have a wealth of data, and they are struggling, frankly, to make sense of both the structured and the unstructured data. So I think natural language processing can help those organizations, to gain insights no matter where it comes from. And, frankly, that's where the fact that where IRIS is a multi-model database, I think, is really significant.
So, certainly the multi-model features within InterSystems IRIS, giving you consistent, cohesive views of the same data, but in different ways, makes a big difference to being able to consume data and make sense of it in a variety of different contexts. I think the natural language processing mechanisms within InterSystems IRIS these days are, I believe we've open sourced those now. Do you see that there's an interest in taking that up within our user base and actively incorporating this into the sort of the analytics that they do, or is this something that people are still sort of struggling with?
Yeah, I think we're seeing both of those. People are still struggling, and I think there is additional interest. When you mentioned we open sourced our embedded natural language processing functionality, largely because we saw a growing need to be adaptable, and also because we saw other NLP kind of open source capabilities out there in the market as well. So we have customers using our own through the open source offer, as well as partners that are incorporating other NLP capabilities from other vendors as well. And I think NLP is becoming more commonly sourced as it becomes a capability of both our solution as well as other solutions. And I think our text exploration technology is different because it uses kind of a bottom-up approach, discovering concepts and relations within the text itself. So, I think we are still seeing interest here, but it's, I think, certainly not as, I think people are still struggling with the best way to use it in their application. So I do still see a lot of opportunity ahead, in other words.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point that you brought out there, Carmen, that a variety of our partners and customers are looking at using InterSystems IRIS as a platform for implementing their NLP solutions, and whether it's the open source flavor of NLP that we've put out into the market, or other people's NLP engines that may be suited to particular point tasks. InterSystems IRIS forms a really great platform because of the multimodal approach to consume data from the outside world, to marshal it, to feed it into these NLP engines, and then to consume the outputs of those in a form that works with the engines, but also works in the context of how the organization wants to apply that output. Overall, in terms of the impact on businesses for the sorts of technologies that we've discussed, embedded BI, real-time BI, adaptive analytics, NLP, overall, what sort of impact can these technologies have and these approaches have on a business that wants to get better in sort of today's world?
Yeah, I think that as a platform, right, we have a lot of capabilities. I mean, some we didn't even get to talk about today are in this area of data and analytics. And, I think the challenge for our customers is to kind of prioritize what they need. I think the primary thing that that we can do as an organization is enable our customers to bring that data together, first of all, and normalize in some cases. In other cases, simply provide, as we said, the semantic layer kind of across it. And then, I think that the things that they can achieve are really a consistency of information and access to both real-time and historical information that will allow them to become more data-driven in their decision-making and to have quick access to the information that they need just to run their day-to-day business. So I think, that's kind of maybe a simpler way to say it, but I think, as a data platform, the thing that we are really good at is being really fast and helping people to work with their data at scale, in much larger scenarios. And I think adaptive analytics certainly extends that, and the capabilities that we have allow our customers to provide the data in the way that they need to see it. Okay,
thanks for that, Colin. Yeah, I mean, just from my perspective, I think the last thing to say is really that, yeah, I mean, the facilities that InterSystems Iris provides, I think really supports this idea of, smart, adaptive, agile organizations that are needed today. They're the types of institution, the types of organization, company that really sort of are doing well in economies that we see today, where there's an increasing number of events which are impacting the way in which the business environment is operating, the way in which people are consuming services, the way in which goods and services flow around the world. And I think having this adaptability, having this flexibility, and then being able to incorporate the output of that flexibility and adaptability into the way the organization is running is key to sort of those organizations that are going to succeed in the future. All right, so thanks to Carmen for that.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
And thanks to you, the audience, for listening this week. If you'd like to know more about InterSystems Iris, please visit our website. There is a link in the description. So I'd like to say goodbye for now. See you next time.